Welcome to Rauta's Reviews. This time we go to Latvia with probably the best known, somewhat of an extreme metal act from Latvia, Skyforger. This is the band that has been around for 30 years, and this new album, Teikas, Folk Tales, is actually their celebration of the era. So 30th anniversary, but with the new album, not a reissue. What is also curious is that it is 10 years since the previous album came out, so it's more than a due time for this band to do a certain kind of a comeback when it comes to releasing new music. Now, those who remember the band from the 90s, when they started, that's when they did their debut album, which I remember liking, and that's when I heard the band for the first time with their debut album, combining some folkier elements to black and metal, or just pagan metal, as I think is very fitting to describe the music. That's what the band, I think, uses describing your music, and not as much black metal. But if you Google it up, go for metal archives and all that stuff, you will kind of get into the world of black metal in terms of genre definitions. Be it as may, this album too has quite a bit of black metal riffing and certain, items which are definitely more related to black metal. But to call it just purely black metal can be a little bit misleading, because in fact this four-piece of a band is definitely quite on the outskirts of black metal. Why? Well, certain riffs are definitely quite black metallic, let's not deny it. It's very Carpathian for us to a certain degree, but there are also quite a lot of ideas which don't really sound like your typical first wave or second wave of black metal. And that's where the folkier comes in, the folkier parts, the pagan metal thing. And that is quite dominating on this album. But before we get into the details of this new album, a quick look to the past is, I think, worth our time. First of all, like I said, this band started with this particular name in 1995 with Skyforger. The logo was a little bit different back then, but it's explained here because certain people misunderstood the original logo, the original symbol here, with some kind of a political statement. And it's explained here, as well as I think we discussed it in my interview a couple of years ago when I got to meet these guys playing in my home city once again. I've seen this band play both fully acoustic set and medieval affairs, as well as a couple of times, doing the metal set. And either way, it works just fine. So, preceding this band, there was, a couple of other names, which I guess mostly is this Grandmaster Dead. So the band had its roots even earlier, even to 1980s. Of those original lineup, talking about Skyforger once again, are two people, Peter or Peteris or Edgar's Zirgs. So these are from 1995, and the rest of the guys are somewhat newer members. If you look at the past members, you will see there are quite a few people who have been in the past story with the given band. So early years, as with most of the bands, were the most active ones. Within about 5 years, they released 4 albums, which is quite a lot if you really think about it, especially nowadays standards. Then there was a 7 years break and another 5 between the later albums. But now, 10 years. It's kind of curious because the band never disbanded. They, I guess, were just too busy. What is also curious is that before this new album, Teikas, they were actually signed to Metal Blade. So once again, a little bit bigger label in terms of, extreme metal and all. And now they are on their own, Thunderforge Records, which I guess very fitting to have the rights, everything under their control. The packaging looks fine, and the music, let's talk about that. This includes some 13 songs, almost 60 minutes of music. And the first thing you will pay attention to most likely is how good the production is. The guitars sound powerful, clear, just like perfect for this kind of music. I think it's very, very dominating and worth mentioning because there are lots of bands even these days, like they have their own understanding about the recording process, mixing and all that stuff, but they fail to nail it. Obviously with bigger bands, when you have better production, better budget and all that stuff, you get the professional producers and all, so it's different. with Skyforger, we're not exactly talking about the big A-list mainstream metal band names. Mainstream and mainstream, but you know what I mean. Then the second thing you probably notice that it's going to be indeed a combination of various things, including kind of a mid-tempo black metal things. Like I said, you can hear certain Carpathian Forest kind of a riffs here, but there are also lots of ideas which could be from the world of thrash metal or even traditional heavy metal. But that is then again married to what you would probably call just pagan metal. You could call it folk metal too. That's beside the point. What matters is, and it's important to understand that Skyforger have always been, like best of both worlds. Surely, certain ideas sound like proper black metal to kind of a traditional second wave thing, but this folkier part, or world music if you will, has also been a big part of the whole story throughout the years. And this album, in my opinion, puts these pieces together in a kind of a almost perfect fashion. The vocals are more, I guess, in a way, kind of a grunting. They're not like death metal growling, but growlier than your typical black metal things, meaning there are no screams or shrieks or even that raspy kind of vocal. So it's more like, if I have to put you something on the map, I mean, it's closer to Pantera's Phil Anselmo style rather than, typical black metal style. But I am not saying it's the same. I'm just giving you a little bit of understanding what's going on. And throughout these 13 songs, you get some stories from the past of Latvia, a lot of folk stories, mythologies, and all that stuff. For example, what is also on the cover here, werewolves. There are stories about how people had these beliefs back in the day. So, for example, werewolf is a character or beast that is dominating, I think, like at least 2 songs. 1 song for sure, but if I remember correctly, browsing through the lyrics, yeah. And then there are stories about witches and other similar stories. Quite interesting if you're fascinated by mythology and some kind of folk tales, fables, fantasy elements and all that stuff. So it's not about modern world. It's not about some cynical, pessimistic, nihilistic. We use so many black metal bands. So if you're looking for some kind of evil album, you're in the wrong place. This is about these folk tales, and in my opinion, Skyforger do them in a nice, very, very, very nice fashion. Meaning they are clearly unique band and they know what they're doing. So in a way, for example, what Amunamoth is doing with Viking stories, marrying them with the melodic death metal, Skyforge is doing mythological takes and putting them together with this kind of a pagan metal thing. So they have found their own niche already decades ago, and they are still nailing it. Sure, at some point, like with the second album, they had a little bit more modern stories, like from 1900s and all. But Teikas is like going into the past, and those who like these folk tales and mythological takes, well, yeah, this is exactly that. So in my opinion, it's a good album and very welcoming, or more like very welcome comeback in a way. I mean, after all, 10 years is a long, long time in nowadays standards for a new album to come out. 2 years, 3 years, sure, 10 years, not so much. But it's good to be back and with such a good album, so I strongly urge you to check it out. Links are, of course, included in the description box, and if you like it, go buy it. And don't forget to check out my interview with the guys a couple of years ago. Bye.